Hollywood's golden era glittered with stars who ruled the silver screen, but beneath the glamour lurked carefully guarded truths. Studio bosses wielded morality clauses like weapons, gossip columnists hunted scandal, and one whisper could shatter a career overnight. Today, we're exposing 10 legends whose private lives defied the spotless images their studios sold to millions. Ready to see behind the curtain? Rock Hudson. Rock Hudson wasn't just Hollywood's ultimate leading man. He was the fantasy millions of women dreamed about. Towering, chiseled, and impossibly charming, he starred opposite Doris Day in romantic comedies that defined an era. But Hudson's real life was a performance more demanding than any film role. His studio, Universal, orchestrated a fake marriage to his agent's secretary, Phyllis Gates, to silence mounting rumors. The marriage lasted barely 3 years before collapsing. Behind closed doors, Hudson maintained relationships with men throughout his career, living in constant terror that exposure would destroy everything he'd built. When his AIDS diagnosis went public in 1984, it forced America to confront both the epidemic and Hudson's truth simultaneously. His death in 1985 became a watershed moment, humanizing a crisis politicians had ignored. Hudson never got to live openly, but his legacy inadvertently launched conversations that changed history. Critics praised his natural screen presence, yet audiences never suspected the exhausting performance happening off-screen. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift redefined what it meant to be a Hollywood leading man. Before Brando or Dean, Clift brought raw vulnerability to roles in A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity, delivering performances that still electrify audiences decades later. Yet his brilliance came wrapped in anguish. Clift's relationships with both men and women reflected his internal struggle with identity in an era that demanded conformity. Elizabeth Taylor became his closest confidant, understanding the pain he carried. Then came the 1956 car accident that shattered his face and spirit. The physical reconstruction was brutal, but the emotional damage ran deeper. He turned to pills and alcohol, numbing the conflict between who he was and who Hollywood demanded he be. Directors noticed his deterioration, yet they kept casting him because his talent remained undeniable. When Clift died of a heart attack in 1966 at just 45, industry insiders whispered it was really a slow destruction that started years earlier. His friend Kevin McCarthy later revealed Clift's bisexuality, adding context to the torment visible in his later performances. Liberace. Liberace turned piano playing into pure spectacle, candelabras, furs, rhinestones, and a smile that could light up Vegas. He became one of entertainment's highest-paid performers, yet spent decades denying the obvious. When a British columnist called him effeminate in 1956, Liberace sued for libel and won, testifying under oath about his supposed interest in marriage. Behind the rhinestones, however, he conducted relationships with men, most notably Scott Thorson, who later sued him in a landmark palimony case that exposed their 5-year relationship. Liberace's lawyers fought viciously to protect his image, settling out of court. Even as AIDS ravaged him in 1987, his publicist insisted he was dying from anemia and a watermelon diet. Only the coroner's report revealed the truth. His death certificate listed AIDS as the cause, making him one of the epidemic's most famous casualties. Fans who'd adored him for decades suddenly understood why he'd never married, why the flamboyance ran so deep. Liberace never apologized for his showmanship, but he never got to be honest either. Cesar Romero. Cesar Romero defined Latin charm in Hollywood's golden age, dancing with everyone from Betty Grable to Carmen Miranda. His portrayal of the Joker in the 1960s Batman series became iconic, that white makeup covering his signature mustache because he refused to shave it. Romero never married, and for decades, studios positioned him as Hollywood's most eligible bachelor, linking him to glamorous actresses in carefully planted gossip items. But insiders knew different. Rumors about his relationships with men circulated quietly through industry circles, whispered in green rooms and at private parties. Romero simply never addressed them, maintaining an elegant silence that served him well. He worked steadily until his death in 1994 at 86, one of the few stars of his generation to sustain a career across 7 decades. Friends remembered him as gracious and private, someone who understood the game and played it perfectly. He attended premieres, charmed journalists, and kept his truth safely locked away. The mystery became part of his legend, that dashing smile hiding whatever secrets he chose to protect. Raymond Burr. Raymond Burr played Perry Mason, television's most righteous attorney, solving cases with logic and moral clarity for 9 seasons. Off-screen, Burr constructed an elaborate fictional life to shield his reality. He spoke often about a deceased wife and child killed in a plane crash, stories that biographers later proved were completely fabricated. No wife, no child, no tragedy, just protective fiction. The truth was far simpler. Burr shared his life with actor Robert Benavides for over 30 years, building businesses and a home together, far from Hollywood's spotlight. They grew orchids, collected art, and created a partnership that lasted until Burr's death in 1993. Benavides was listed in his will, revealing what colleagues had quietly understood. Burr never publicly acknowledged his orientation, maintaining the elaborate backstory until the end. His Perry Mason character stood for truth and justice, yet Burr's own life required constant performance. The irony wasn't lost on those who knew him. Still, his talent was undeniable, earning him multiple Emmys and a legacy as one of television's most commanding presences. Sir John Gielgud. Sir John Gielgud stood among Britain's greatest classical actors, his voice considered one of the finest instruments in theatre history. Shakespeare, Wilde, Chekhov. Gielgud commanded them all with effortless brilliance. Then came 1953, when police arrested him in a London public restroom for persistently importuning for immoral purposes, code for soliciting another man. The charge could have obliterated his career, dragging one of England's cultural treasures through tabloid mud. Instead, something remarkable happened. When Gielgud returned to the stage, audiences gave him a standing ovation, refusing to let scandal define genius. His colleagues rallied around him, and work continued. Though he never publicly discussed his orientation, the theater world understood and protected him. Gielgud lived quietly with his partner Martin Hensler for decades, maintaining privacy without deception. By his death in 2000 at 96, he'd accumulated virtually every theatrical honor imaginable. Critics consistently praised his technique, his intelligence, his emotional range. The 1953 arrest became a footnote rather than a defining moment, proof that sometimes talent transcends scandal. George Maharis. George Maharis exploded onto screens in Route 66, playing Buzz Murdoch, the tough, sensitive drifter navigating America's highways. With his brooding looks and raw charisma, Maharis seemed destined for major stardom. Then came 1967, when police arrested him in a Los Angeles restroom for lewd conduct with another man. The arrest made headlines, and Hollywood's doors slammed shut. A second arrest in the 1970s sealed his fate as a leading man. Studios that had courted him now wouldn't return calls. Maharis never publicly addressed his orientation, but the arrests spoke loudly enough. He continued acting in smaller roles, television guest spots, but the momentum was gone. Fans who'd made Route 66 a hit wondered what happened to their rebel hero. The answer was simple. He got caught being himself in an era that criminalized it. Maharis spent his later years largely out of the spotlight, a reminder that even promising careers could be destroyed by one wrong moment in one wrong place. His talent deserved better, but 1960s America wasn't ready to separate the art from the artist. Anthony Perkins. Anthony Perkins delivered one of cinema's most chilling performances as Norman Bates in Hitchcock's Psycho, creating a character so iconic it defined psychological horror. But Perkins' real life involved struggles that paralleled his most famous roles' themes of hidden identity and societal pressure. Rumors about his orientation followed him throughout his career, and he underwent conversion therapy in desperate attempts to change. He married photographer Barry Berenson in 1973, and they had 2 sons, yet whispers persisted. Colleagues later revealed Perkins had relationships with men, including Tab Hunter and Grover Dale. The conflict between public expectation and private truth tormented him. When Perkins died of AIDS-related complications in 1992, just 3 days after his wife issued a statement confirming his diagnosis, the full picture emerged. He'd hidden his status even from close friends, maintaining the performance until the very end. Barry stood by him, devastated by the loss. Perkins never got to reconcile the different parts of himself publicly, forever associated with a character who also lived in 2 worlds. Roddy McDowall. Roddy McDowall started as a child star in How Green Was My Valley, then became a science fiction icon in Planet of the Apes, delivering humanity through pounds of ape makeup. Between those bookends stretched one of Hollywood's most respected careers. McDowall was beloved by colleagues, known for his kindness, professionalism, and famous parties that brought together Hollywood's elite. He never married, and though he never publicly addressed his orientation, it was widely considered common knowledge within the industry. McDowall maintained close friendships with Elizabeth Taylor, Carol Burnett, and other major stars who valued his loyalty and discretion. He was also an accomplished photographer, capturing intimate portraits of his famous friends. When McDowall died of cancer in 1998, tributes poured in from across the entertainment world. Directors praised his craft, actors remembered his generosity, and everyone respected his privacy. He'd navigated Hollywood's treacherous waters with grace, building a legacy based on talent rather than scandal. McDowall proved that some secrets could be kept through simple dignity and the respect that genuine artistry commands. Paul Lynde. Paul Lynde became a household name as the center square on Hollywood squares, delivering innuendo-laced quips that made him one of television's most recognizable comedians. His camp humor and flamboyant style made his orientation seem obvious, yet Lynde never publicly acknowledged it, terrified of losing mainstream appeal. Behind the laughs lurked deep insecurity and heavy drinking. Friends described him as lonely despite his fame, unable to live openly, yet unable to hide completely. His comedy walked a tightrope, witty enough to keep audiences laughing, campy enough to be authentic, but never crossing into explicit confession. When Lynde died of a heart attack in 1982 at 55, colleagues revealed the pain he'd carried. The constant performance, the fear of exposure, the isolation of being known yet unseen, it had taken its toll. Lynde's brilliance made millions laugh, but he never got to experience the freedom his humor hinted at. His legacy lives on in clips that still get laughs, that distinctive voice delivering perfectly timed zingers that suggested everything while stating nothing. These 10 legends ruled the screen while fighting battles audiences never saw. From Hudson's forced marriage to Lynde's lonely brilliance, each story reveals the devastating cost of silence. So here's the question. If these stars were starting out today, how many would still choose acting knowing the price they paid? Drop your thoughts below and tell us which hidden story shocked you most. Was the golden age really golden, or just gold-plated over something darker?